Okay, so thanks a lot for coming back to the afternoon session of our program for Athens KTC on the 9 stages of Shamatha. This morning, we talked about the practice of sitting meditation and how important it is to us to help us deal with our roiling, boiling mind and to deal with all of the difficulties that we have in the fast-paced modern world. Then we talked about the techniques of meditation, how one places the body, how one places the mind, how one forms the intention, and then practices being aware. We talked about breath awareness, meditation this morning, as well as meditation on an object. And also we talked about this morning the how to deal with sleepiness and how to deal with agitation. We talked about techniques and strategies for that. And we ended this morning's program talking about Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's teaching on the 4 stages of Shamatha. And I'll go ahead at the end of the talk today and then repost in the chat. I'll repost links to these 2 diagrams so you can have them. And so that was this morning. We covered quite a bit. Now this afternoon, I want to start by piggybacking off an earlier question about the different methods for honing our 2 meditative skills. One meditative skill is mindfulness. And remember from this morning, mindfulness is that sense of being aware of what you are doing when you are doing it. That is the first skill that we learn from shamatha or calm abiding meditation. So what the first skill we gain is mindfulness, being aware of and mindful of what we are doing when we are doing it. But that's not the only skill we learn. We learn another skill, a second skill called alertness. Now, some people use the word awareness instead of the word alertness, but whichever of these 2 words you use, it is that function of your mind that notices when you're not being mindful. It's the part of your mind that recognizes, alertness recognizes when you're not being mindful. It's what lets you know that your attention has wandered from your object. Let's use the example we used this morning of sitting in meditation and you hear a sound. So you're sitting in meditation and you're doing your best to be aware of the breath, and then you hear a car door slam outside. You might, your mind for a moment, your attention may leave the breath for a moment and you think, car door. But then you're right back to the breath again as though nothing had happened. That's one way of working with the things that arise in meditation, just the simple return. But it gets a little more complex when that sound then triggers a story, for example, which is a chain of thinking. You hear the car door and then you think, hey, is that my neighbor? Is he parking in my space again? I told him not to do that. And then our tranquility is, shall we say, interrupted by this momentary lapse in alertness. Okay, but what happens is at some point, even in that story that we're telling ourselves, alertness may go, hey, you're not meditating anymore. And then we go, oh, I'm not meditating. And so alertness alerts us to the fact that we have wandered away from the object of our attention. And then what we do is the same technique. We touch it with our attention, we let it go, and then we return our attention to the breath and act as if it's a fresh start for our meditation. So as I was saying this morning, even when we do like a simple 10-minute or 15-minute meditation, that 10 or 15-minute meditation may be broken into shorter mini sessions of a short period of attention, that's followed by a period of wandering. Whether we wander into the future, wander into the past, or start thinking about the now, we're going to have this short period of attention that's followed by wandering. And our job, the job of mindfulness and alertness, mindfulness is establishing that intention to keep practicing meditation. But alertness lets us know when that's lapsed, when that mindfulness has lapsed. And so they help each other. Mindfulness brings up alertness, and alertness helps mindfulness. So those two help each other. Now, when we complete our session of meditation, one of my meditation teachers, His Eminence Tai Situ Rinpoche, when I attended a program on meditation at his monastery, he was teaching a whole big group of people, and we were all meditating together. At the end, he said, "Now, don't just jump up from your seat. Don't just pop up from your seat as though you were a child released for recess, from school. So he said, don't just act like a child who's suddenly told they could go out and play. Don't, woo, He said, don't be quick and impulsive when you end your meditation. In fact, you should do your best to rise slowly and get up gradually and re-engage with your surroundings in a way that is at least a little bit meditative." And so in that way, he said that you can actually begin to extend your mindfulness and alertness off of the meditation seat and toward your daily activity. In the morning session, we talked about Mingyur Rinpoche's encouragement of people to be aware of things they hear, to be aware of space itself, to be aware of thoughts, and so on as objects of meditation. But you can also, once you have gotten up from your seat, you can do that sort of mixing of your attention and your mind with what you're actually doing. Those of you who've read the Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, he said, when you're washing dishes, just wash your dishes. Don't be thinking about something else. Just be there with your dishes. And then you will have a more complete experience of your life. You'll actually be able to be more present with your friends and family when you speak to them because you won't be somewhere else. You'll be attentive to what they're saying. And so if we can mix this mindfulness and alertness with our everyday activities, we'll be able to extend the benefit of our meditation. Now, sometimes we're not attentive. And we get, when we're out walking around, we get angry, or we get impatient, or we get upset. We can also bring meditation into that moment also by treating it as we would a distraction that arises in meditation. That car door that slammed, and we just said car door, and we sort of let it go, and then went back to the breath. We won't be able to do that with things that upset us. We won't be that quick. But what we can do is when our alertness tells us that we're really we're sort of careening off the road with our emotions, it will alert us to that fact, and we can do something. We can halt for a moment. All of my friends from the 12-step tradition will recognize the word halt. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. In other words, when we're upset by the things that happen in our world, what we need to do for that moment is halt, meaning you stop for a second and you can anchor yourself in your breath. Just breathe for a minute. When you're upset, just breathe for a minute. And in fact, you can even use breath as a form of calming. You might remember the Tibetan physician, Akhong Rinpoche. He wrote a wonderful book. Oops, I'm going to try to type the title in chat. Taming the Tiger. He wrote a book about mental health called Taming the Tiger, in which he gives a series of mental health exercises that he devised based on Tibetan medicine. The very first of these is breathing. And a lot of folks who have been involved in or have practiced psychotherapy will also recognize this method, because it's sometimes called square breathing, where you breathe in for a count, and Akron Rinpoche gives the count of 5. Then you hold the breath for 5 seconds. And then you breathe out. You can breathe out through the mouth to a count of 5. And you do this 3 times or 5 times, breathing in for a count of 5, holding for a count of 5, and then breathing out for a count of 5. And if you do this several times, if you're fortunate and your body goes along with what it's trying to do, your heart rate will go down just a little bit, and you might actually feel a little less upset. And so these types of awarenesses or these types of exercises are exercises you can do when you're not meditating on your meditation seat. When things hit you suddenly, you can think of this method or technique and then practice that breathing, and that will help calm your mind down even just a little bit. And so this ability to take meditation off of your meditation seat and into your everyday life, that's a skill that is facilitated by mindfulness and alertness. And so those are the 2 skills that we talked about this morning. I just wanted to make sure that I covered this segue or this transition from the seat to your everyday life, because without that, it makes it a little difficult to integrate the skills of mindfulness and alertness with everyday life. Some people will think, well, meditation, that's what I do on my seat, on my meditation seat, but then the rest of my life is a mess. You know, it's like it's chaos. And so this dichotomy gets created of meditation being great and everyday life not being so great. But the idea is, if we can begin to put the 2 of them together, then things begin to work a little better for us. And I have one more exercise, daily life exercise, to share with you. And then we'll dive into the topic of the 9 stages of shamatha. And that is a technique that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught. He said that once a person adjusts to doing meditation regularly, and remember from this morning, his advice was to do it consistently, even just a little bit every day. Just a few minutes every day consistently is better than an hour from time to time. And as our confidence in meditation grows, we may actually experience moments of quiet in our mind. It could happen. There are 3 major experiences that can happen when you're meditating. One is an experience of, I'm going to type this into chat, well-being. You just feel good. It happens occasionally, not always, but it does happen occasionally when you're meditating. You'll just have physical or mental well-being. The second kind of experience is clarity. Your mind will seem clear and alert and sharp. And the third is non-thought. These are the 3 experiences that can arise from doing shamatha practice. Maybe they only happen for a split second, but you'll recognize them. Khenpo Rinpoche, in his advice, said that when you experience these, when you're meditating, sometimes you'll get a little excited, like, ooh, something's happening, you know, ooh, this is good. He said, try not to do that. Try not to do that. He said, because he said, then you'll get a little bit fluttery and excited, and then you won't be able to really integrate what's happening. You won't be able to integrate it. You'll think of it as being separate from you and being separate from practice, you know, just like we don't want meditation to be over here and our daily life to be over here. We don't want meditation to be here and then experiences over here. We don't want to divorce these two. And one of the ways to integrate them, you're not going to believe how simple it is to integrate them. He basically said, don't pay attention to them. Pay no attention to that experience that's happening in your mind. Pay no attention to that. Just return to the technique that you're practicing. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The idea is that you can and you should actually, if you have experiences of well-being or clarity or non-thought, the best thing to do in meditation is to let go of any concept of, ooh, something is happening, you know, and just go and treat it as you would any other thing that arises when you're meditating. You note it, you let it go, and you return to the technique. And when you do that, sometimes the experience will end. That's not a bad thing, because what Khenpo Rinpoche said to us was that these experiences of well-being, clarity, and non-thought are actually not necessarily products of your meditation. They're actually the fruition of positive karma that you have accumulated in previous lifetimes. And because they are the fruition of karma, and most of our karma has been accumulated with some selfish taint or stain, like we're generous to somebody, but we expect them to say thank you. Or we're kind to someone and we expect other people to see how great we are, you know, because all of our good karma is usually a little bit mixed up with confusion and mistaken motivation. He said what will happen is that good karma will flower and then wither. So he said sometimes these experiences happen once and never happen again. But we shouldn't take that as a negative judgment on our meditation. It's just that the circumstances were right today at this time on this seat for the fruition of that positive karma, which then ended once it came to fruition. But what Rinpoche says these experiences can do for us is they can give us confidence that meditation is effective, because that meditation may not have produced that effect of the experience. It may not have produced it, but it conditioned our mind in the moment and we experienced it. So it was part of the condition, not the cause. So in other words, there are causes and conditions. Causes have to do with our karma, and conditions are that atmosphere in which that karma comes to fruition. So meditation is part of the condition. And because we had the right condition, this karma came to fruition. But because we didn't cling to it, when it ended, we didn't stop meditating. We didn't stop meditating because that experience ended. We kept going. And that's why the technique, when an experience happens, is there are 2 or 3 different ways you can deal with them. The easiest is to treat it like anything else, let it go, and return to the technique of watching the breath or your object. The other way to deal with it is to let it, just let it be there. Maintain an uninvolved awareness of it. Like you're not excited about it, but you're not trying to chase it away either. You're just being aware of it, like you're watching something sparkle in the dust sparkle in the sunlight, you know? And then just allow it to end when it ends, and then return to the technique. There's a couple different ways to work with that. Yeah, I see. Did you want me to share your thought there, Sue? Yeah, basically, Sue just wrote, I had what I thought was a really special experience while meditating and was so excited to tell Rinpoche, but then I was crushed when he told me that was nice, but to go on with my regular meditation. Then I laughed and understood it. So it's like, she got it, right? So that's their job. Isn't it something? Our teachers are there to kind of stick a pin in anything that has to do with self-fixation. They're kind of there to stick that pin in there so that we follow the proper path and don't get dissuaded from or diverted from our path. This is good. It's good stuff. And so I did actually kind of veer off into this subject about what about heightened neurosis? This actually will happen. This is called this does happen. This does happen. It's called upheaval. Great name, right? This will happen, and you can do the same thing. You can do the same thing. Is like, that's nice, but this is what I'm doing right now. Now that's harder because sometimes upheaval is it kind of it's like involved in your body. So it's like you can't quite like put it aside because it's like in there. And these upheavals will happen, but we try to, there's a couple different things you can do, again, with mindfulness and alertness. If an upheaval happens, you can use that breathing technique, that 5 and then 5 and 5. And then Akron Rinpoche gave a second technique after you do the breathing so that you can work with an upheaval. And so he taught the creation of an imaginary gate in space in front of you. You just close your eyes. You're still having the upheaval, but you've done the breathing. You've done your square breathing or your 5 and 5 and 5. You've done a few of those. And then you close your eyes and imagine a gate in front of you in space. It could be a wooden gate. It could be a stone gate. It can look like something from Lord of the Rings. I mean, you can make it a gate. And you mentally send all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions through the gate. You just send them without judging them. Just send them all through the gate. Here, go, here, go here. And then once they go through the gate and they're on the other side, they turn into the golden light of universal compassion. And then it fills the room you're in and affects you. And it fills the house you're in. It fills the neighborhood. It fills the city. It fills the state, the nation, the world, the universe. And you just breathe like that. You can either key it to your breath or just imagine that it's flowing out of you. No matter what you're feeling, all those upheaval emotions of sadness or unhappiness or anger or whatever, you just send them all through the gate. And on the other side, they turn into this golden light of universal compassion, which is a way of talking about what they really are, which is they really are of the nature of what the Buddha called Dharmakaya. And the basis of Dharmakaya is good. The content of our thoughts may not be good, but the basis, that essential nature of them as emptiness and luminosity, that's basically good. So that's, to me, I think that will help with the upheavals while you're meditating, is to do that 2-part practice of breathing to calm things down a bit, and then closing your eyes and imagining the gate and letting, either through breathing them out through the gate or just allowing them to flow out through the gate and turn into, and you can just do that as long as you need to. And again, your mindfulness of the technique of visualizing and your alertness will help you stay with that technique as long as you need to. Does that help? Okay. One more thing from me, and then we'll go to the next subject. And that is, I'm very glad I talked about experience. I didn't intend to this afternoon. I didn't intend to do that. So that was like a 10-minute diversion, but I'm really glad I talked about it because it will come in handy when we're going through that diagram, because these 3 things are mentioned at the end of the diagram. So you'll see them there. So these 3 experiences will show up again. But the other thing I wanted to mention was another practice that Khenpo Rinpoche gave us to do when we are not meditating. He said, after you've been meditating for a while and you get a little confidence, like you know what meditation is for and you know what it is. He said, sometimes during the day, he said, there are natural lulls in your time. There's a moment of quiet, like maybe you've just put down the phone, you know, you just finished a call and you put the phone down. And then you haven't taken up your next task yet. He said, when you're at these little natural quiet moments, he said, just let everything drop. He says, it's like letting your mind flop. The translator actually used the word flop. And Rinpoche said, you know, like how you flop in your chair at the end of a busy day. And you just sit for a second, and it literally will be like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Just let your mind drop. And it actually, once you become accustomed to doing this, it will actually stay dropped for several seconds when you do that. And then normal thinking will start again, you know, like, what am I doing now? And, you know, and so on. And he said that these natural lulls in our day, you know, he said, you can do this like this, he didn't call it pocket meditation, but it's like this little like instantaneous moment of meditation. It's just like a mini meditation. He said, you can sprinkle these throughout your entire day. You have to remember to do it. So there's that mindfulness and alertness again. But if you can think of it, when one thing's over and the next thing hasn't started, just let your mind drop. I had a friend who's a professional writer. So he has a lot of stopping places in his day. And he's finished one assignment and he hasn't taken up the next one or something. Or he's on his coffee break or whatever. And he said that this actually helped him a lot. Just putting more space in between what's going on in his mind. Just it's like you're injecting some spaciousness into your day purposefully. And so anyhow, I just thought I would bring that up. So thanks. Now, just like I did this morning, when we get to the top of the next hour of this coming hour, I will take a 5-minute break. But before that, I'd like to be able to move into the topic of the 9 stages of shamatha. This morning, when we described Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's teachings on the 4 stages of shamatha, he used water as an example. The first stage of shamatha is when you notice that you're having a lot of thoughts, like a waterfall. He said that's actually shows that you have arrived at the first stage of shamatha. If you are having lots of thoughts and there's a lot of motion in your mind, that's the first stage. You're aware of that, and that's the important thing. You're aware of it. Second stage is the meandering river, where you still have a lot of thoughts, but they're not as fast or as overwhelming. The third stage of shamatha is the ocean with waves, where you begin to have quiet periods in your meditation, but every now and then there's a big wave that comes in and falls back into the ocean again. And then the fourth stage of meditation is the windless, waveless ocean, where you can be attentive to your object of meditation as long as you wish. Well, we're all not there yet, but all of us have experienced the rushing waterfall. And some of us have actually experienced the meandering river. And so as a result, we know that we are making progress. And to me, that's the important part. The important point I want to impart to you today is that no matter where you are, whether you're at the waterfall or the meandering river or the ocean with waves or the waveless ocean, no matter where you are, you actually are making progress. And if you continue, to do a little bit of meditation every day, that progress will continue. So anyway, I thought I would start with just a restatement of that, and then get into the next topic. When the 9 stages of shamatha are talked about, let's see if I can make this bigger. Now it's okay. I have a drawing that I shared with the organizers. I think I did before the session. And so you may or may not have it. If you don't have it in front of you, don't worry, because I'm going to have one here in front of us. Let's see if I can get to this, there it is. There it is. Okay, very good. I am sorry it's so small, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to enlarge it and move it around a bit. Okay. And my plan is to go through this diagram 3 times. The reason I want to go through it 3 times is because I was a kid in school, and I know that the more you go through something, the more you notice and the more you remember. I mean, who hasn't had a 3-year-old niece, nephew, daughter, granddaughter watch a movie continuously and sing every song with that movie? They want to watch it again and again and again. And so why not use that same tendency to learn stuff? So there we go. So I'm going to tell you a little story. You can see my cursor, right? The little, okay. So we're going to go on a little journey with a meditator and his or her mind, okay? We're going to go on a little journey. And I love the narrative movement of this diagram. And I don't know how old the diagram is. It has to be hundreds of years old. But I don't know when it first appeared. I'd have to do some research to find out about that. But in the Tibetan tradition, it's been used for a very long time. We have the meditator. This is the first character in our little drama, the meditator. And then we have the meditator's mind. And then we have mental scattering. So the meditator's mind is depicted as an elephant. And the mental scattering is our favorite, the monkey. Everybody has talked about their monkey mind at one time or another. And so these 3 characters, plus another surprise character that shows up later, will appear in our little drama. The elephant in this, it begins, as you can see, the elephant and the monkey both begin completely covered in mud. They are completely covered in mud, and they're running. Look at, they're galloping. Look at the elephant, all 4 feet are off the ground. He is galloping away from the meditator who is galloping after them with 2 things. A lasso, which is mindfulness, and a hook, an elephant hook, which is alertness. Remember, mindfulness and alertness are 2 skills. So the meditator is galloping after the mind, which is obviously an elephant and a monkey who have just been in a mud puddle, and they are spreading their stuff everywhere. So there we go. So they're off. Dum, da, da, dum, da, da, dum, da, 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 dum. So then we have them rounding. They're rounding the first turn, and at this next stage, you can see they're still quite far apart, but some of the mud's coming off. Mental clarity and stability is starting to happen, and the monkey's head is also losing some of its mud. And by the way, the flame on the side, it shows the diligence and effort one must put into actually following the technique. At first, it takes a lot of effort to do the technique, and then it gets easier. So anyway, alertness is out in front. I'll catch you, elephant. I'll catch you. Anyway, so at any case, and then as we go around the next turn, the flame is still kind of high. And then finally, the meditator grabs hold of the elephant with mindfulness. And the monkey, by the way, is still out in front if you haven't noticed. And And it's still, mental scattering is still leading our mind around. And then another character enters, a rabbit. This is subtle mental syncing. Yes, we have another potential problem arise here. Another character enters to complicate the plot. And now that we have learned a little bit of meditation, we can actually now have a new kind of obstacle, which is syncing, where we just kind of, we become, it's not like we become entranced, but it's almost like we become dull. There's a Tibetan word for it, jingwa, but we'll get into the Tibetan terms on another day. We need a longer program to get into all the terminology. But subtle mental syncing, and look, that suddenly appearing rabbit also is mostly still covered in mud. But now, look what's happened. Now that he's been roped, the elephant is now looking at the meditator saying, oh, you've been trying to get hold of me. Oh. And then in the next scene, by the way, you've noticed that the elephant is slowing down. He was galloping. Now he's just kind of trotting. Now he's kind of like, what? And here he's kind of like, what? And then here he's like, oh, okay, I think I see what's happening here. And the monkey's losing his mud. Elephant's losing his mud. Jingwa, our poor rabbit, is losing his mud. Then look, the effort is getting less and less. And then we come to this scene where now the monkey is no longer leading, but he's behind. He's holding on to the elephant's tail. So he's no longer out in front, no longer leading the activity. And so now not only does the meditator have mindfulness, the lasso on the elephant, he now is able to use the hook of attentiveness very easily and very well to bring the elephant under control. Then, with still some effort, the meditator can move forward with alertness, but mindfulness is still engaged. And then finally, in this scene, the monkey basically kneels in submission, saying, okay, I give up, you win. Meditator, you win. And almost all the mud is off the elephant, and some of it is, and all of it's off the monkey. And then at last, you see the lasso is gone. The hook is no longer out front. And here, all of the tools have been abandoned. And the elephant follows the meditator like a friend, confidently. And then in this scene, the elephant and the man or woman meditator, they are now completely at peace and united as friends. And that is where the path of shamatha ends. But there's more. There's this is the path of vipassana, or insight. A rainbow comes from the heart of the person resting in equipoise, in shamatha, the person completely at rest. And this rainbow comes from his or her heart and brings about this well-being, this feeling of well-being, which is the flight, the monk flying or the monastic flying. That's that well-being. And then this clarity and non-thought are symbolized by these two images. And then finally, with the, it says here, with the help of powerful mental alertness and recollection, one proceeds through the gradual paths of awakening. In other words, now one can take one's own direction. now that one has seen what mind really is and gained mastery over the mind, one can then take the sword of wisdom, which the monastic is holding here, the sword of wisdom, and cut in two the two kinds of confusion, the confusion of mental afflictions and the confusion of ignorance, of basic ignorance to the nature of things. And then this new direction then with the new flame of effort it's like a new flame. It's not the same effort. It's like the flame of inspiration and so on. It says cutting the root of samsara by meditating on emptiness, actually on the basic nature of mind itself. Pretty cool, huh? So that's the first time through the little drama. But I'm going to go through it again. And I'm going to, the second time through, I'm going to make note of the 9 stages of shamatha that are numbered here. So you can note them and see how a person progresses through them. I wanted to at least tell the narrative story once. Hey, I've got, I'm sorry. I've got microphones muted at the moment. Sorry about that. Did somebody have a question? Okay. All right. Just checking. Okay. I'll get to questions just in a second here. So I wanted to at least go through the kind of comic opera of it. You know, it's kind of the kind of funniness of it. But now we can get a little bit more serious about what's going on here. In this first scene, this is the first of the stages of shamatha. I have to get I have a key here. Key. Oh, here we go. It's called placing or resting the mind. That's the first of the 9 stages of shamatha, placing or resting the mind. And then while one is resting the mind, we are engaging when we're not meditating, when we're not busy meditating, we're practicing hearing, contemplating, and meditating. You know, we're hearing the Dharma and listening to the Dharma and learning the Dharma. See, you see here the force of listening, the force of contemplating, and then meditating is the action itself. So the first stage of shamatha is placing the mind. And this means that when we start meditating, we place our attention on the object, which we were talking about the breath this morning. The second of the 9 stages of shamatha is called continual placement. Sometimes I use the word, some translations use the word continuing, and not continual, but continuing, meaning that first you place the attention on the breath, but it won't stay long. It'll only stay a few seconds, then it wanders off. But the second stage of shamatha, when you get to the second stage of these 9 stages, you're able to let it rest a few seconds longer. So this means you've made some progress. You're not just placing your attention once and it only lasts for a second or two. You're placing your attention and it's continuing for a few extra seconds. By the way, you'll start to notice things off the path now. This is fruit. This is a silk cloth. And these represent the 5 sense objects. These are the first 2 of the 5 sense objects. And these are the things that can distract us from meditation. You see they're off the path. So when we apply hearing the Dharma and contemplating the Dharma, we get more fuel to practice meditation. And so that's why they are placed, the force of listening and the force of contemplating, that's why they're placed so early in the diagram. And then eventually we get to the force of mindfulness or meditation itself. And that brings us to the third stage of the 9 stages of shamatha, which is replacement of the mind. First one was placement or resting. The second stage was continuing the rest or continuing the placing, meaning it's continuing for a few more seconds. Third is learning the skill of being able to return your attention when it wanders. So now we've incorporated three skills, not just the skill of mindfulness and alertness, but now we've learned how to not just rest the mind for a few seconds or rest the mind for a few seconds longer. Now we've learned how to notice distraction and return our attention. So now if we can get to the place where we can do that, we've reached the third stage of shamatha. And that's when we begin to notice things like the subtle mental sinking. And when we do that, we have to use our remedies. When we're too agitated, we have to use the remedy of calming the mind down, using the visualization techniques we talked about this morning. And when our mind is too sleepy, we have to use our techniques to dispel sleepiness. So we learned this morning how to dispel agitation and sleepiness. And so this means that we're learning about applying our remedies. The fourth stage is close placement, meaning that we get better at placing and letting it stay. In this way, the mind becomes increasingly settled on the object. It becomes closer to the object. It's, you sort of have more of a connection to the object. And then you see off the path now that talks about smell and sound as being objects of distraction. And if I remember correctly, these are in order of how they are dealt with. We can usually deal with tactile sensations more easily and taste more easily, but then smell can distract us a little more, sound a little more, and we're going to get up to vision shortly. So then if we can continue to practice, then we add the force of alertness. And coming around, we get to the fifth. Yeah, the fifth, which they're calling controlling. And I'm going to use another illustration's label, taming. Taming. Number 5 is taming. This actually deals with our attitude. The next 2 are about our attitude. First, we develop the attitude of recognizing the benefits of meditation. And by recognizing the benefits of meditation, how meditation tames our mind, we are more motivated to practice. At first, we aren't motivated to practice because we have to use remedies so much and we get a little discouraged. But when we get to this 5th stage, we have begun to understand the benefits of meditation and we're more motivated. We are more motivated to practice. Then you see the distraction of form, which is the last of the 5 senses. It's the hardest one to overcome. Then when we arrive at the 6th stage of pacifying, it's the other attitude adjustment. Number 5, we adjust our attitude by remembering the benefits of meditation. Number 6, we improve our attitude by remembering the defects of unbridled following of distraction. Seeing the faults of distraction, we actually pacify our dislike for the whole practice of meditation. We spent number 5 and number 6, number 5 thinking about its benefits, and number 6 thinking about the defects of wandering. And then when we reach number 7, the 7th stage, it's called completely pacifying. And what this means is, it doesn't mean that our mind is completely pacified now. What it means is that we've improved our attitude and our skills so much that we don't have to think too hard or work too hard to know what to do when something happens in meditation. In other words, we don't freak out when we're sitting and meditating and something happens, because if we're sleepy, we know exactly what to do. If we're agitated, we know exactly what to do. If we're having experiences, whether they're pleasant experiences or unpleasant experiences, we know exactly what to do. And so it's almost like at the 7th, it's like the process of learning how to drive a car. You know, when we first learn to drive a car, it's like all of the pieces that go into driving a car are overwhelming. Like, you have to pay attention to each movement of the wheel, or you'll hit the curb, or when you're trying to turn, you'll bump the curb, or like you have to watch everything all the time. And it's like nerve-wracking. But after a while, it becomes so natural to you that you just, when you go around the corner, you just turn the wheel. You just turn the wheel. You know what the car is going to do. You know exactly what the car is going to do. And you know exactly how to stay in your lane. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. That's this moment in when we reach the 7th stage of meditation, then we know exactly what to do, and we can get it all working together. Number 8, the 8th stage is called single-pointedness, or one-pointedness. It says when one attains, then when one has gotten to this point, one has attained some stability through applying one's antidotes. So here, you know what antidote to apply and how to apply it. Here, you're doing it. It's all working the way it should. Everything, all of your meditative techniques are working the way that you should. Mindfulness and alertness are so internalized, the meditator doesn't even have the lasso and hook anymore because they're so internalized. And then finally, and here's the force of complete familiarity. And then finally, number 9, placement and equipoise. Finally, one is able to rest the mind on its object naturally without resorting to antidotes. In other words, you know exactly what to do and you've got it on cruise. So that's the second time through the diagram. And then when one is to this stage, then we can talk about a vipassana in the second half of our session here. But I just wanted to get you this far. I don't want to not give you your break. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing for a second here, and yeah, and then see if anybody has any questions at this point. I can do questions for a few minutes and then we'll take our break. You can either type them in chat or just say hi, unmute your microphone and say hi.
Hi, Lama. It's Jonathan.
Hey. Yeah.
Hey, question. Is it possible to experience the 9 different stages within one sitting? And also, is it possible that it's not always so linear? That sometimes, depending on our circumstance or afflictions, that yes, we may reach a certain level, but then other days of the times we have to take 2 steps back.
I would have to ask. I would have to ask one of the Tibetan scholars or meditation masters for the definitive answer to this. So what I'm going to do is just talk around about it a bit, but I don't have a definitive answer. My sense of it is that you could go through all 9 stages in a single sitting. I think it could happen. But I think what they're talking about here, and I also think that you can go back and forth. I actually do think that, because we haven't really, but I don't think we would be able to, I don't know that once a person gets to number 9, I don't think that there's a lot of backtracking at that point. But again, I'd have to ask the scholars and meditation masters for their take on that. But my sense of it is that it is our experience as meditators that some days are great and other days are not great. And I remember Ponlop Rinpoche was teaching at Karma Triana Dharma Chakra at KTD Monastery in Woodstock. And he said, our mistake as meditators is that we think somehow that once we start meditating, it's going to be a steady progression, up, 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 up. And he said, and it's not like that. He says, it's more like, our experience is more like the stock market. It's up one day and down the next. And he said, this is why it's important not to get too discouraged when you're in a dip, and not to get too encouraged when you have a high. So there's highs and lows. He said, just keep up the effort, keep meditating no matter what's going on. He said, because if you do that, then the general trend will be up, even if there's highs and lows. He said, because your karma is coming to fruition serially. Okay. It's coming to fruition serially. And so because of that, you're going to have good days and bad days. So I can't answer you with authority on the questions as to whether you can go through all 9 in a single session. My tendency would be to think not, because once you get to that final stage, I think that there's probably not a lot of backtracking you can do. But I do know that within any session, you might feel like you're doing all 9 in one session, and I can see how that would be. So hope that was a good answer. Thank you. So we have a question here. Someone is, go ahead. Okay. Someone is asking, what is the technique? Okay. Loved the technique of dropping. Okay. And then Jonathan, okay, got that. What's physical pliancy? The physical pliancy is like this feeling of well-being that's mental. I mean, that's physical, where your body just feels comfy and you could just sit for a while. That's what they mean by physical pliancy, is like, oh, I could just do this for a while. But then there's also mental pliancy or well-being. There's like physical well-being where your body feels kind of good meditating. And then there's the mental well-being where I could do this for a while, mentally well-being. So that's what the pliancy, they talk about pliancy, but it's like these feelings of well-being is what they mean. Then Jeff is asking for a richer description of form. Oh yeah. If we look at those 5 things, there's, let's see if I can remember them in order. Well, wait a minute, I'll just cheat and have the paper in front of me. Oh yeah, it starts with the tactile sensation, and then the taste, and then the smell, and then the hearing, and then the vision. And so, form is the object for the visual sense. And for a lot of people, seeing things is way more distracting than feeling things or hearing things. But if you got something jumping across your field of vision, it's harder. But I don't know, Jeff, did that answer your question? Did that answer your question? Okay, thanks, Jeff. And then Michael's asking the difference between mindfulness and alertness. I'll do my best on that. Mindfulness is the function of mind that knows what it is doing when it is doing it. It's like there's a continual thread of intention, to be meditating. So we are mindful that we are meditating when we are meditating. We are mindful we are washing dishes when we are washing dishes. We are mindful of walking when we are walking. It's that function of mind that remains with what we are doing. And alertness is that function of mind that lets us know when we're no longer being mindful. It's the part that says, oh, I've been thinking for the last 2 minutes. It's that alertness that is alerting us to the fact that we haven't been mindful and have not been with the technique. I don't know, does that help, Michael? Yes, okay, thank you. And then Stephen has a question. Yes, Stephen.
Am I on?
Yes. Yeah. You're good.
Okay. So during the period of the pandemic here, I added on an extra afternoon session of meditation, and it was working very well, and I was having a lot of good positive results. And then that began to fall off, and I thought, well, I must try harder. I'll hunker down and try harder and try harder. And well, that's not working either. That's not so good. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I'll back off a little bit and just do less, just mm-hmm. sort of relax, do less. And I thought, no, that's not really doing it either. So what I resolved on was to continue to maintain the same amount of activity, maintain the same amount of meditation each day. And as I felt either elated or let down by my practice, I would just sort of somehow just even it out. And just the main thing that I was doing was maintaining the same amount of meditation rather than curtailing or adding, just keeping on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And I think if the only thing I would add to it, I think that is a good approach, because then it isn't subjected to either excitement or depression, because you just keep on keeping on, right? But the main thing that I would advise to add to that would be cultivating an attitude of openness to both what we might call good meditation and what we might call bad meditation. I think the problem is that because we're human, and human beings always want to improve, we get attached to that trajectory thinking we're always going to improve. And so we inadvertently add ego fixation to our attempts at practice. And that additive, that additive is not a good additive for meditation. It won't help us. That ego fixation, like, am I having a good meditation or am I having a bad meditation? That additive is not beneficial for the meditation. And in fact, there's in one of the books that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught, he talked about there needing to be 4 conditions for meditation to go well. And the first one was that you have a mind that knows the value of meditation. Number one, sometimes it's called the fully renounced mind. It means you're not really interested in samsara, like, oh, I think I'll go have fun instead of meditating. So that you get there. Second is, the second of the factors that will help you is that you have and can follow a good teacher's advice. It's one thing to have a teacher, it's another to follow their advice. So yes, you have to have and follow the advice. Third is that you don't intellectualize your meditation by saying, oh, my meditation has to fit this thing that I read, not trying to make your meditation fit an idea. And then the last one is to have zero ambition. You have to not want to have a good meditation. And that's the cultivation of that attitude of equanimity, that you sit down and you're just open to how you are. That's what patience is being open to how things are. when Lama Lodro Lamo, the women's retreat master at Carmeling, was teaching at KTD monastery a few years ago, she said, patience doesn't mean you're putting up with something. No, 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 no. She said, patience doesn't mean putting up with something. It means cultivating an openness to how the situation is. Like, yep, that's the world, and the world is going to be messed up sometimes. And yep, that's people. People are going to be messed up sometimes. And so being able, so that's the only thing I would add to what you're already doing. I think you've done a good job of adjusting your attitude and having and just meditating the same amount, whether you're having a good day or whether you're having a not good day. I think that's great. But now it's time to work with that more subtle problem, which is wanting to have a good meditation. And, you know, and just, and this is why a lot of people start their practice of meditation with something called guru yoga, where you imagine that your guru is present in front of you in space, and maybe your guru's in the form of a Buddha made of light, and you pray to your guru and say, please grant your blessing that my meditation be free from all these things, you know, and that my meditation be fruitful. And that's where you put your intention in asking for the guru's blessing. And then you imagine that the guru dissolves into you and blesses you. And then you just forget about ambition and just work with your mind. You've already done everything you could do, you know? So it's like that. Does that work?
Right on the money. Yeah.
And okay, so what we're going to do, I see Mara, I don't know how you pronounce your name. Is it Mara? I see your question. And what we're going to do is I'm going to type out the answer during the break. And so we're going to take our 5-minute break now. I made you wait a little long, but I'm going to turn off my camera and turn off my microphone and just take 5 minutes off, but I'll be back in 5 minutes. That's 23 minutes past the hour. So I'll see you in a little bit. And Mara, I'll type out that answer for you, okay?
Thank you. And it's the correct pronunciation.
We're back. Okay. Okay, ready to start the next section. Sorry, I was a little bit late coming back. I had to check in on what was going on in the kitchen. I put my husband in charge of lunch. I think it was a good idea. I'll know more in a little while, but as of right now, I'm confident. He didn't have one ingredient he needed, so he made his own. It's like he made his own ingredient. It's like, dude, you're so great. So, all right. Way to go.
Peanut butter?
What's that?
Made his own peanut butter?
Yeah, very funny.
Sorry.
Although, I wouldn't put it past him. I honestly wouldn't. Like a lot of people who have who've been home a lot during the pandemic, we've learned, we kind of relearned how to cook because we had become quite lazy and had not done a lot of cooking, and we're both having some fun with it now.
Yeah.
But
I've been making a lot of recipes out of the New York Times, just trying to figure out how to cook different cultures and that kind of stuff. I'm getting better at it.
Good for you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, fantastic. Well, okay. I think we're ready to start again. And I made the mistake this time of not turning off the recording during the break. So there'll be this like black space and nothing happening. So you can just fast forward through that if you watch this again. So before I take up the next iteration of going through the diagram, I was going to go through the diagram yet again, and give you a few things. I did want to note that in chat, I did type in the 4 conditions as a repetition for Mara. The first of these, first condition, they actually have names. Let's see if I can remember them now. I have to bring this all back from memory. First one is the causal condition, meaning that you are fully renounced of samsara if you can. Second one is the principal condition. Principal condition is the one is the teacher. Third is the focal condition, meaning that you're attentive to the right thing in meditation and not the wrong thing in meditation. And then fourth, it's the immediate condition. I actually remembered it. Sometimes I have to look them up. So the immediate condition is not wanting and desiring some accomplishment from your meditation. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. Is there any other? Okay, yeah, okay, that's good. So I think we're ready, if it's okay, unless you have, I'll tell you what, let me go through the diagram one more time, and then we'll sit for a few minutes, and then I'll do like a grand ending question period. Okay, sound good? That way we'll get through the diagram one more time, because I want to add a few details to it. There it is. Oh, that's going to be complicated. Okay, let's see if we can. Hang on a second here. I had it appearing in the wrong place. Oh gosh. I love desktop computers and how interesting they are, but sometimes they don't do what you want. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's the drawing, and here is screen share, drawing, go. Yay. All right. So to go through them again, the first one of these is, by the way, you will find, if I don't have access to chat at the moment, but If you go to the Rigpa, R-I-G-P-A, wiki, W-I-K-I, the Rigpa wiki, you can look up the 9 ways of resting the mind. 9 ways, or it should say stages, but anyway, 9 ways of resting the mind. And it'll give you this fantastic annotated diagram. It'll give you just this really nice, anyway, this nice diagram with all the explanations. So now, when I go through this time, I'm going to talk about what are called the 6 powers. The 6 powers are what help us accomplish the 9 stages. And I know people get, they kind of get a little bit peeved when we do this in Tibetan Buddhism. The 6 of these, the 6 of this, and the 4 of this, and the 5 of this. And part of the reason for this is that books were not always available. And since books were not always available, people had to memorize things so that they could say that they had a command of the topic. And so these 9 stages, by the way, and just in case you're interested, the 9 stages are taken from Maitreya's Ornament of Mahayana Sutras. Ornament of Mahayana Sutras. So if you want to go look at a really old book, I forget when Maitreya in Asanga, Maitreya taught through the great Master Asanga. I forget what century he was. He's somewhere between Nagarjuna and Shantideva, I think. But anyhow, this is where they're first mentioned. So that's kind of nice to know that they showed up there. Okay, these 9 stages are accomplished by taking hold of and developing 6 powers. And so which magical powers are we going to develop first? Well, as you can see here at the very first stage, the force of listening, or the power. The first is the power of listening to the Dharma, just being able to hear the Dharma. The second is the power or force of contemplating the Dharma, meaning that you ask questions about it and you clarify your understanding. You don't just hear it, you ask questions to integrate the meaning. The third power is the force of mindfulness. And then which means actually meditating. You're not just hearing the Dharma and working it over in your mind and then not doing anything with it. You're actually applying it through meditation. Then we have the force of mindfulness. Then we have the force of alertness, or the power of alertness. Through this alertness, one accomplishes taming the mind and pacifying the mind and completely pacifying the mind. So, I see. These actually correspond to the resting the mind is accomplished. This first one of resting the mind or placing the mind is accomplished through the power of listening and contemplating. So these 2 powers help you get to the first stage of the 9. And then the second stage of continuing placement is reached through reflecting on the Dharma. I get it. Oh, I see. Resting the mind is accomplished through listening. I get it. Resting the mind. I'm teaching myself this topic, by the way, while we're doing this. The first stage is accomplished through the force of listening. The second stage is accomplished through contemplating or reflecting on the Dharma. That's what gets us to the second stage. The force of mindfulness gets us to these the next 2 stages, which is being able to place, continuously place this continual placement that he talks about here, continual placement. No, that's not it. No, replacement. Here it is, replacement and close placement. The force of mindfulness leads us to replacement and close placement. Now I got it. Now we're working on it with a full head of steam. So yeah, okay, I got it. Then the power or force of alertness accomplishes the next three, which is taming the mind. They call it controlling here. And pacifying. And then completely pacifying. So that's 5, 6, and 7 come about by applying the fourth power, which is alertness. The fifth of the powers is called diligence, and it is here they're calling it the diligence, right? And that helps us to accomplish the complete pacification and one-pointedness. These next two. Okay, complete pacification and one-pointedness. And then complete familiarity, force of complete familiarity allows us to rest in equipoise. So I'm going to read these out to you to make sure I got them all right, okay? So I'm going to open up the chat and I'm going to type them in, okay? That'll make it easy. The power of listening facilitates the first of the 9 stages, which is resting the mind or placing the mind. So that's what the power of listening does. The power of reflection or contemplating the Dharma facilitates the second stage of the 9 stages, which is resting a little longer. And then the third power, the power of mindfulness, facilitates continuously resettling. And fully settling the mind. The fourth power alertness facilitates the taming and and pacifying. So then, diligence. Oh, you know what? I've sent these all as individual messages to Catherine. I do apologize. I've been typing them all in. Oh, darn. Okay, well, I'm just having some problems. Sorry, everyone. Okay, let's do the second one. Here's Here's the third one. And here's the fourth one. And okay, very good. And then the fifth is diligence. And then sixth, power, complete familiarity. Facilitates the ninth stage. So, and again, all of this will be in the, I'll send a copy of this PDF. I think I made a PDF of this, but you can also find it in the 9 Ways of Resting the Mind in Rigpa Wiki. So I wanted to go through that so that you could see that meditation practice relies on many things. It relies on alertness and recollection, or mindfulness and alertness. It relies on being able to hear and contemplate and practice the Dharma and meditate on the Dharma. It requires us to continuously work toward noticing and letting go of distractions of all kinds. It depends upon us having having equanimity toward experiences, not craving them, not being afraid of having them or not having them, just being, cultivating this equanimity, and continuously practicing, not giving up your practice. And so that takes us to the practice of vipassana. And you remember at the beginning, I was saying in this morning's session, I said that in the Tibetan tradition, shamatha and vipassana are not always taught simultaneously. Although some people could say that the practices in the Nyingma tradition of Dzogchen would be a form of conjoined shamatha and vipassana. But in the Kagyu tradition, they try to practice shamatha first. The reason that they give for teaching shamatha first and then introducing vipassana later is because if we don't have good shamatha practice, then when we attempt to meditate on mind itself as the object, when we take mind itself as the object in vipassana, then it's our practice isn't stable, and we might lose the practice and become discouraged because our shamatha isn't good enough. And then when the object of meditation, the subtle object of meditation, becomes more and more subtle, looking at the mind and its manifestations, it makes it very difficult. So in this way, frequently when Mahamudra is taught, it's taught in 2 phases: the preliminaries and the main practice. The preliminaries consist of 4 types of guru yoga: refuge and bodhicitta, vajrasattva practice, mandala offering practice, and a guru yoga practice. When those are completed, then one takes up the actual practice of Mahamudra, which is then divided also into 2 parts, shamatha and vipassana. One learns special techniques of shamatha, starting with grosser objects that become more and more and more subtle until one sort of crosses over and ends up looking at and meditating on mind itself. And so it's a gradual change, technique-wise. Although good Dharma teachers will allow for what might happen when a person does shamatha really well, they will begin to have experiences of well-being and clarity and non-thought, which then the teacher can show them how to work with it, the way we talked about it earlier today, when we said, if you have an experience, just let it go and return to the technique and just be with the technique, and then your shamatha will improve so that at some point you will be ready to receive instruction in vipassana. But vipassana and shamatha will somehow cross over a little bit. Even early in the process, there will be these moments of bliss, clarity, and non-thought, and you'll think you've arrived, but that's not the case. This is why teacher is really important, because the teacher will tell you to keep practicing your shamatha. So for some people, shamatha gives way naturally to vipassana just by letting the mind come to rest. And then once it comes to rest, then it's easy to reestablish rest and so forth, and distractions are not as problematic. So there are several different ways in which shamatha and vipassana are integrated. Another way in which shamatha and vipassana are integrated in the Tibetan tradition is through the practice of mantra. When a person is doing mantra practice, the shamatha aspect of mantra practice is the visualization of the Buddha or bodhisattva of the practice. When a person, for example, is meditating on Chenrezig, they imagine Chenrezig is above their head and made of light. We supplicate Chenrezig. He blesses us and the universe with light. We become Chenrezig. Our flesh and blood body is then imagined to be a body made of light. The world around us is the realm of Dewa Chen, and all the other beings are Chenrezig, and so forth. And you can see it goes from sort of a grosser object to a more and more subtle object until at the very end of the meditation, we dissolve ourselves, we dissolve the whole universe into the Chenrezig above our head, the Chenrezig above our head into ourselves. And then we, as Chenrezig, dissolve from the top to the middle and the bottom of the middle into our heart and then into emptiness. And in this way, shamatha gives way to a short and choreographed moment of vipassana. And then from that short moment of emptiness arises our thinking again. And when it re-arises, we are taught to re-arise as Chenrezig. Again, imagining our body to be made of light and so on. And so in so doing, shamatha and vipassana join in the practice of mantra and visualization. So from the arrival at equipoise or shamatha, then we achieve this calm abiding, which then gives us the physical pliancy, mental pliancy, and then with the help of powerful mental alertness and recollection, one then proceeds through the gradual paths of awakening by cutting the root of samsara by meditating on emptiness itself. So that's another time through the diagram. So I wanted to go through the diagram 3 times. I think we got through it 2.5 times, so it's kind of close. And so now I'm going to spend the rest of the time on questions, and then maybe we'll sit for a few minutes at the end. Questions? Or maybe we should meditate now.
Lama Kathy?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Patricia.
Yes.
I'm wondering, I just have curiosity about the symbols for smell and form. Is that, form looks like a mala to me.
Form is actually a mirror. Do I have my visual aid here? No, I can't put my hands on it right away. But a Tibetan illustration of a mirror is generally circular, and it's sometimes set in a teardrop-shaped mirror frame. And the mirror itself is marked with dots, indicating its reflecting capacity. So it's like, so that what you're seeing in form is a mirror, is an illustration of a Tibetan mirror. And that's why it looks like a mala, but it's not.
What about smell?
Smell. This is a conch shell. And a conch shell is often put on a shrine and filled with perfume water. And so then the perfumed water smell it's symbolized by the conch shell, which is filled with a perfume. The taste is fruit, and then the tactile sensation is a silk cloth. Barbara, you have a question. Oh, sorry, you'll have to unmute, Barbara. I apologize. I can't do it from here.
Okay.
Got it.
Talking about the meditative states of being, you mentioned well-being, clarity, and non-thought. And the teacher's advice was to, instead of saying, oh, something's happening, and you get excited, not to get excited about that. And then later you use the phrase, stick a pin in it. Okay. Okay, now I know that's all internal. That's dealing with your mental states internally. But I don't know. I'm a fan of Anthony DeMello. I don't know if you heard of him.
Not familiar.
He's an Indian man, and his teachings are kind of like Buddhistic, like to me.
Okay.
So, he wrote 2 books. One is called Awareness, and the other one is called The Way of Love. And one of the things he says is, and this is about how a person is, or how they become after like being a meditator. So he said this: if you find me charming, it means that right now you're in a good mood, nothing more. It also means that I fit your shopping list. So that to me is more of an egoless person who sees the reality of what is going on.
Yeah.
Instead of being flattered by that.
Right.
He does not. So, does that make sense?
Teachable moments are everywhere. When you're working with teachers, they find the opportunity to teach us things every moment. And really good teachers can teach you with simplicity, such as the simple way they approach questions, or the simple way they approach such a simple action as drinking a cup of tea. Really good teachers are teaching you all the time. And I think it's really smart for teachers to do it that way, because otherwise they can fall into a trap of listening to all that praise and thinking it's true.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if that was a response to your observation or question, or did you have a question, or was it just an observation?
No, it just, I wondered if you're teaching today about not getting excited about a state of mind that you think you have achieved would relate to a person responding like he did. If you think I'm charming, it just means that you are in a good mood right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah, and I think I understand. It's a very subtle distinction that you're making, And I think what I think the subtle distinction is that not getting excited about a state of meditation is incredibly important. It's incredibly important not to get excited. And for that teacher, it was incredibly important for him not to get excited about the praise of another person, right?
Yes.
And so in a way, I like to think of Buddhism as being, they call Buddhism the middle path. The middle path, it's free from the extremes. And so, for example, I had a friend who worked with me when I was a newspaper reporter, and he had an equalizing practice that he would do. He had 2 files in his file drawer. One, his name was Joe. So one was labeled Good Joe. And then the other one was Bad Joe. And so when people would criticize him and tell him how bad he would go and open the Good Joe file, which had all of the letters he had received from people who said that his writing changed their life. And he would try not to feel too discouraged by the criticism. On the other hand, if somebody told him he was the best thing since sliced bread, he would open up the Bad Joe file and read all of the letters that called him out on all of his mistakes so that he would feel some humility. And that's a kind of a labor-intensive way of doing that, but bless him. Just bless him for coming to that understanding that one needs to feel equanimity and that one needs to bring oneself back to equanimity again and again and again. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, so I see Helder is asking about Maitreya Buddha. I don't have enough time to really devote to talking about him, but I will tell you that they talk about the Buddhas of the 10 directions in 3 times. The 10 directions are north, east, south, west, northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, and then up and down. So that's 10 directions. The 3 times are past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. And it refers to the fact that there will be a Buddha. There's going to be, I was told there's going to be, the scriptures say there'll be like 1,000 Buddhas appearing in this fortunate eon. And I've forgotten off the top of my head the name of the previous Buddha because it's different in different texts. So we get a little difference in the sutras as to who the previous Buddha was. The present Buddha is the Buddha Shakyamuni. His teaching has happened and is now still alive in the world. But there will be a future Buddha, and that future Buddha is called Maitreya. The name has to do with Maitri, which means loving kindness. He'll be called Buddha loving kindness. And he will be the next Buddha of this era. And I guess the way it works is that all of the Buddhas, the way my teacher explained it, is that all of these Buddhas will appear and they will practice Dharma, they will attain awakening, and they will teach. And so we're in the process of waiting for Maitreya at the moment, but we don't need to worry about him appearing anytime soon because we have to wait for the teachings of the current Buddha to start waning. And although some people say that they are waning now, we'll have to wait and see about that. And so Maitreya is the future Buddha. And he appeared to the great Indian master Asanga. And if you want to look up the story, just type in Asanga and Maitreya, and read the story. It's fascinating. Asanga prayed to Maitreya and had had no success and was very discouraged. And when he left his hermitage, he saw 3 different things, one after the other, and they encouraged him to keep meditating. So it's a great story, and you can read about it online. And Judy, looks like we are at the top of the hour, so this looks like this will be the last question. Will you please comment on this? As I understand it, when the mind calms with Shine practice, I understand that wisdom that's within all of us begins to surface more easily and readily in relative and ultimate realms. I'm not exactly sure what relative and ultimate realms means in your question, but I can comment on the first part of it, which is that is true. And I've also heard the same thing, that as we decrease our negative karma and increase our positive karma, as we do less non-virtue and do more virtue, our minds are more soft and pliable, and our meditation goes better. And we gradually can take on the discipline of the bodhisattva, trying to benefit ourselves and others. As we continue on the path, virtue conditions our mind. And as virtue conditions our mind, we're more open to teachings and practice. And as teachings and practice continue to enrich our mind, we may have flashes of insight about the nature of mind. We may have flashes of insight about the nature of reality. And as such, we become encouraged about our practice. And that Buddha nature that is within us arises first for us as inspiration. I'll never forget, Situ Rinpoche said to us, he said, the fact of the matter is, he said, our Buddha nature is starting to show itself even now, he said, in the fact that we can be touched by anything. He said, sometimes when people watch a dance performance, or they see beautiful art, or they hear beautiful music, or they see beautiful theater, he said they're moved to the core and touched so much that they start to cry. He said this capacity for being touched is proof of the existence of our Buddha nature. And it's not that we have to then pursue the path of being touched all the time. It's that we use this experience as confidence building to know that our Buddha nature is already present within us. It's already there. And that if we can continue to practice, then our Buddha nature will gradually show itself more and more and more. And so I don't know if that answers your question or not, but because I apologize for not understanding relative and ultimate realms. So that's, so is that a good start?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'm awfully sorry that I can't stay and do more questions, but and I'm sorry that we kind of wandered around a bit there in the middle with the 6 powers and the 6 powers and the 9 stages. That was a little messy. I'll try to tighten up that part of the presentation later. I was trying to show how all of the things we are doing now, hearing, contemplating, meditating, and so on, how all of these things slowly build to help propel us through the 9 stages. So I was trying to give people encouragement to know you're already on the path. You're already at one of the 4 stages of rushing waterfall, or or the 4 stages. You're at one of those. And that gradually through hearing and learning the Dharma and continuing to practice, you'll be able to traverse the rest of these 9 paths and accomplish Buddhahood for the sake of all of us. So I hope that this was a way of being encouraged. So, so now what I'd like to do, because we've run out of time, is I'm going to type my email address here. Yes? Somebody talking?
I just wondered if I could get your email address.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it's Lama Kathy at columbusktc.org. There it is. It's in chat. And you can ask, that way you can ask questions that you weren't able to ask today. And I will send to the organizers, the Athens organizers, copies of the handouts for today. I think there will be 3 and possibly 4. I may actually provide you, if I have a PDF of that Rigpa Wiki list, I'll send that to you as well. And I, you know, and I'm hoping that at some point in the future, maybe not now, but sometime in the future, I'll be able to do something that I did a long time ago at KTD, which is teach an entire 5-day meditation retreat on the 9 stages. I did that at KTD a few years ago. It was a lot of fun. But now they have Kempos at KTD, so they don't need me there at the moment. So, but I'm thinking of when Columbus KTC gets its new building, and when COVID opens up a little, it begins to decrease, and we begin to have opening of things, that I'll be able to do a longer program on the 9 stages, and we'll be able to do more practice, as I apologize for us not doing a lot of practice today. But at least we've got some info to start with. So let's sit quietly for just a moment. I actually got my meditation gong out. We'll sit quietly for a moment, just watching our breath for just a couple of minutes. Okay. Once again, thanks to the members and friends of the Athens, Ohio Karmatik Choling Center for hosting this talk today. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your weekend. I know, thank you for doing that. And I hope we get to do more of these. So we'll keep coming back to you and offering these things. So thank you so much for bringing your sincerity. Now let's gather together all the goodness that we've accomplished today, all the virtue, and dedicate it to all sentient beings. I'll recite the short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Lama Kathy. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Lama Kathy. Yoo-hoo.
Thank you.